made it to another Wednesday.
We did. Should we clap for ourselves? It's been a week.
Getting to Wednesday. Politically motivated.
Yes.
The show of shows. Quite a lineup for today.
We do. We're going to talk about war and voting.
War Powers Acts. We're going to talk about voting.
Yes.
We're going to talk about all of that. But let's get going with new polling out.
Okay.
University of North Florida just dropped this. Two different things to unpack on this one. We have property taxes, which is still, maybe it's happening.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not. Yeah, who knows? And then also, of course, the gubernatorial race, which is still up in the air.
Right.
On property taxes, the headline out of this is 56% of voters said they are in favor of gradually eliminating property taxes. 35% are opposed, which means there's a chunky middle there that's kind of like, who knows? But that 56 number is interesting because obviously in Florida, 60% to pass and 56 ain't 60.
No, it's not. But I guess I always sort of wonder if on these polls, do they ask them if they understand what it would take? Or are they just going at face value? We want them gone, right?
Yeah, and when you crack into the crosstabs on this one, you see a partisan split. Clearly, for those who are politically engaged, if you're on the right, you're like very much in favor of this because you're hearing the CFO, you're hearing the governor, everybody say, let's get rid of property taxes. And if you're on the left, you're hearing the same thing. And you're thinking, I don't like anything DeSantis or Angolia does, so therefore this is bad. But at the end of the day, that 60% threshold, I think, may end up being the thing that kills this idea, just because we've yet to see any real polling come out saying there is a groundswell of support for this.
And I mean, we're running against time. I mean, the clock is ticking. So either way, whether people support it or not, I mean, we need an outline, we need a rubric, and we need hard facts at this point about how we are going to do this. Is it a viable plan? Because it's groundbreaking. It is potentially the biggest tax cut I think we've ever seen. But we sound like a broken record. We just don't know what it means for Florida.
Yeah, and then that's, of course, before you start to see all the different groups that will come out either before or against it and flood the airwaves and flood social media with, don't vote for this or do vote for this, and you really start to see things solidify. But you want, traditionally, if you look at the way that these proposed constitutional amendments always play out, you want to start above 60 because there's going to be support going to chip away as you go. You want to start in the high 60s, maybe in the 70s, because by the time you hit election day, some of that's going to vanish.
Right, exactly. You always want to start stronger and have some leverage and some, ability to sort of move backwards, which you don't want. But you make a good point.
If I was a betting man, I would say this is not going to be on your November ballot, but I've been wrong before. It has happened.
I want to bet against you, but I agree, so we'll see.
So the same polling found Byron Donalds, who is considered by many to be the GOP frontrunner for the nomination for governor, leading David Jolly, 42-36, leading Jerry Demings, Orange County mayor, 43-36. Good margins, but again, neither one is really running away with this thing.
No, and again, I just you had mentioned before that this polling is largely party lines, and so it's sort of, we know that people stick with their candidate, but I still feel very confident. I would be willing to bet that Byron Donalds could take it. I mean, at this point, I just feel like his name is everywhere. Sometimes it's a popularity contest. It's about who's the loudest in the ring. And I think he's really doing a great job with the ads, with his interviews, both on local stations and national stations and national networks. He is hitting this hard.
He's hitting it hard. He's got the registering voters.
That's the bottom line there.
Yeah, because you and I were talking before, and you were asking what's going on with Palm Beach County, and I said the Republican Party down there is engaged.
I guess what's interesting is that it is still largely Democrat, but when it comes to registered voters, that's sort of that caveat. Who can you get to the polls? Who can you get to make their voices heard? Doesn't matter how many Democrats you've got. If none of them show up to vote, it means nothing. And so, as you mentioned, they have done a great job at mobilizing their voters.
And if you think about this from, again, the blocking and tackling, the simple job of trying to win elections as a party apparatus, a registered voter who is registered to your party, you know in the election, has that person voted? Now, you don't know who they voted for.
Right.
Or even if they, filled out the ballot to begin with, they can show up, get their ballot, turn it in, and that's it. It's an undervote. But but you have a pretty good inkling. If you're a registered Democrat and you show up to vote, you're voting Democratic. And so when you know you've got that universe of voters, those are who you're activating.
Yeah.
Because the NPAs, the people who are, the third parties, you have no clue who they're voting for.
They're loud.
So that registration advantage is not nothing. So anyway, UNF, North Florida polling.
Yeah, they're really good about that.
Coming in for that one. All right, what do you want to do? You want to go to Bill's dying, or do you want to talk about...
I think we got to talk about the I'm saying this with air quotes, war.
I would call it a war.
Yeah. While you were sleeping, if you haven't been paying attention, U.S., Israel launched joint strikes over... I looked up every station, of course, our news station, my phone just going crazy. But there has been significant debate from lawmakers, too, about whether or not doing this was constitutional. And it all has to do over a little something called power. Who gets to determine when we go to war or when we exercise military force?
And this is where the U.S. Constitution, I think, it clearly states that it's Congress's job, the Article 1 branch, to issue a declaration of war. And in this situation, you have the White House saying, well, we're covered under the president's authority as commander in chief to go forward with this. And they're pointing to previous actions by previous presidents. This is where it gets a little bit murky.
Yeah.
Previous actions by previous presidents, some have been covered by what we call an AUMF, Authorized Use of Military Force. AUMF is what we had for Operation Iraqi Freedom. It was the AUMF in place for the war in Afghanistan. And that AUMF extended into the Obama presidency for many of the drone strikes over Syria. So that is different than what we're seeing now. So to kind of parse these two out, you do have Congress, which should probably have been consulted ahead of time. I know the Gang of Eight was brought in and given information ahead of time, but Congress should have been brought in. Congress should have been given buy-in into this and a declaration of war. If you can make the case to the 435 members, make it. But yeah, at the end of the day, this is an issue where under the Constitution, Congress should have had to issue a declaration of war.
I don't know that we're surprised, considering, throughout this presidency specifically, this is President's second term, he has made it very clear that Congress is not his concern. He has an idea, and this is not a political statement, but if he decides something is necessary, he has taken the stance of, I'm going to do it. I'm not going to consult Congress. And you and I have discussed, you just mentioned, Congress needs to kind of assert itself.
Yep.
Say, hey, remember our Constitution? Hey, remember sort of the way law and order is supposed to function, and they're not doing that. But by not doing that, and now we see the largest escalation thus far, a war between our country and the Middle East with Israel in play. Are we going to see our president start to go backwards and say, I should probably ask our elected Congress?
So to take a quick deviation on this, part of the reason why the Constitution is written the way it is because we didn't really have a standing army.
Right.
We had militias everywhere, and so if you needed to activate an army, you needed Congress to buy in because you were going to need money to go conscript people. You were going to need money to go bring some of these militia members in, who most of them had other jobs they had to do.
Right.
So there wasn't an idea of having this giant standing army like we have now. That all changed under the Adams presidency. But then when you get to what we have now, you have each president is basically given this tool to use. And that tool is the United States military, the absolute greatest, strongest fighting force the world has ever seen, both in size and in scope. And the ability for a president to use that is one of those areas that is somewhat unchecked. But that doesn't get us away from the fact that Article 1 very clearly states the obligation, the right, the agency to declare war falls on Congress. And if you can make the case, you make it to the members. You go before a joint session. And we mentioned when we talked about the State of the Union, that would have been a chance for President Trump to make the case for a war with Iran.
set some agenda items and
Yes.
let folks know, or we're watching this, because all we have heard is essentially he does not want Iran to be able to have the opportunity to create nuclear weapons. And so we've got to go in and we've got to stop them from doing this. And now we're seeing the fallout, very real fallout, might I add. A lot of times we have these projections. Well, what could happen? The fallout is here. We've seen 6 U.S. service members killed, one of which was from Winter Haven, a captain with the U.S. Army. We're now seeing gas prices skyrocket, and I'm very careful not to just automatically attribute that. AAA has finally confirmed and said, yes, this is related to the war. What was the number? I think it jumped 11 cents. This is the largest jump since Hurricane Katrina. I was just out on the story yesterday, and I just looked up at Wawa, and I saw $3.25, and it was $2.88 on Monday. So I said, oh, we're here. This is happening.
This is happening, and there are going to continue to be downstream effects. And the fact that you've had both the Secretary of Defense and you've had the Joint Chiefs and others come out and give these different, ideas, different rationales for what we're doing. Well, we need to obliterate their nuclear program. Okay. Well, they were going to attack us. We thought they were. Or their attack was imminent. Okay. No, this is regime change. Okay.
Yeah.
You have 90 million people in Iran. You get rid of the Ayatollah, which the Israelis got rid of. You still have the Islamic Guard there. You still have all the mullahs still there. You've not gone in the way like with Venezuela when you go in and you remove the head and you had somebody you can slide in. This is not Venezuela. This is a very rich, very well-educated country. And if we're going to do regime change, which we've heard a couple of times is where this is headed, it will require boots on the ground.
Yeah.
And
an organization.
But that's where you need to go to Congress and say, I am going to have to send your sons and daughters over there to stabilize this area. I need buy-in. And this is, again, that is one of the things that gets contemplated in Article 1 of the Constitution. And more to the point,
I love how you always bring it home. Like, hey, we didn't just arbitrarily bring up the Constitution for no reason. There's rhyme and reason to this, and it's going to require a lot more than just, sort of an after the fact, hey, we did this because, and deal with it. And
as this goes on and the scope continues to evolve, do we now have obligations to some of our allies in the Middle East? Already we're seeing the State Department struggle to get Americans out of the 14 countries that they say should be evacuated. What obligations do we have to some of our close allies and some of our frenemies, if you will, in the Middle East if this does continue to expand? Because we've seen this before. We've seen this kind of playbook before. And again, it's the job of the president to go make that case.
Yeah. And then there was also polling too, where a lot of folks were just saying, hey, we never asked for this. We want to be able to buy groceries and afford homes. We talked about this, I think, on Monday, right after this had happened. Some being very happy that, the U.S. stepped in and killed Ayatollah, I think it's Khamenei. I want to make sure I'm pronouncing that right. Let's be clear. It helped a lot of Iranians. It helped a lot of Iranian Americans. People were celebrating all across the country. But the subsequent fallout and the things that have to happen now that this is done, it's a done deal, are what we're addressing today and why there's been so much confusion about this whole operation.
And to put a bow on all this before we take our break, two things can be true at the same time. The path to do what has been done and what will need to be done is laid out and is relatively clear. And whether you are going to get a new AUMF put in place or whether you're going to get a declaration of war, that's one thing. The other thing is this. You can say all of that and also still say Iran's a bad actor. There is no love lost for the regime in Iran. They have been a state sponsor of terrorism abroad. They have actively targeted Americans and American military institutions. They are a bad actor, full stop. But if we're going to move forward, there are ways we do it, and we don't just run roughshod over the United States Constitution.
Well put.
All right, let's take a break, and when we come back, we'll talk about the bills that are dying and the elections that are coming.
All right. Welcome back. It is Wednesday, which means you're seeing Christopher Heath, myself, Lauren Melendez, politically motivated, bringing you all things happening with the Florida legislature. And speaking of which, looking at my watch, time is running out. So if you were with us before the break, we were saying how bills are dying. We only have an X amount of time to get things passed.
60-day session.
Yeah.
We can go into overtime, but that's just for budget stuff and then blah, blah,
Which
blah.
we need a budget, but there are some notable things that have been presented, and they really aren't gaining any traction.
Yes, John Thrasher, the late John Thrasher used to say, gentlemen, bills are dying, and that is correct.
It's true.
We have gotten to, they call it the 50-day rule. Once you hit 50 days, a bill has to be in a certain posture.
Right.
Basically, it has to have gone through so many committees, has to have gotten to a certain point before it's functionally dead. Now, nothing's actually dead in Tallahassee till the hanky drops, but functionally a lot of bills are dying. And this is where I think when you and I as journalists, we talk about these, we have an obligation to let people know when bills are filed, but I think we also have an obligation to let them know that the vast majority of bills that get filed
don't ever see the light of day.
Most don't even make it to a committee. And so we are starting to see some of these bills die. The ones that I found interesting and have flagged a couple and for us are the ones that either made it through all of one chamber and have gone nowhere in the other.
Okay, let's dig in.
Or the ones that were kind of high profile. And they're ones we've covered before. The Florida free kill law is one that I know we've covered extensively. Basically, in Florida, you can only file a malpractice lawsuit for a death if you are in a specific category. You've got to be the child, child, not like just adult child, and have a parent, or be the spouse. Those are basically the only two categories. And it's called the free kill law because so many people, their adult parent passes away, there's no spouse, and you suspect malpractice, but you can't bring a civil suit under this law. It has been on the table to be repealed so many times and gone nowhere.
Nothing. They just won't do anything with it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it speaks to, the House passed it, the Senate is being a little more tentative, but it passed last year and DeSantis vetoed it.
Right.
Obviously, listen, the insurance lobby, the medical lobby, they like this protection in there against malpractice lawsuits, but you do have cases that pop up where something happened and somebody died, and there's no way to hold them civilly culpable for what happened.
I was going to say, you don't see a lot of malpractice lawsuits making the news for that very reason. There's tons of insurance that protects hospitals, that protects doctors, but you are right. Mistakes are made, people die, and families want damages. They want retribution. They want something in place of their loved one who didn't make it. Accountability. That's the best way to put it. Yeah. Okay. How about the public safety bill? This is a bill that would modernize Florida's 911 system. It's considered to be dead. This is HB 1427. So we listed this as well.
Yeah. Just again, another one that is made its way a little bit here, a little bit there, but it's not currently teed up to get its blessing before the 60 days.
A quick caveat on that, Volusia County did just vote. That may be dead, but they voted to use something called AVA to sort of modernize their call center. So there are other things happening in the state, just to let you know that, public safety is obviously top of mind, but it's essentially AI being able to field calls so that it can free up humans to be able to dispatch those other calls. So I thought that was really interesting in relation to this.
And one of the ones you brought up when we were chatting is the one that would have capped the number of foreign students at Florida universities. This is one that the House passed, but again, it's not going to pass the Senate.
Right. Yeah. So 95% threshold, essentially, they want to have a certain amount of space allotted for students from Florida. And it sounds great. Obviously, if you are Floridian, you want to feel like, hey, my son or daughter or student, whoever has priority at a Florida university, caps the non-citizen or international student acceptance rate at 5% from any one country. But there is some pushback. There's concern that this sort of just marginalizes people from other countries who do contribute heavily to our universities and to really our society overall.
Well, and if we're going to say that our university system and enrollment and acceptance is all merit-based, then it needs to be merit-based.
Right.
But this has been the tension you saw in places like Harvard and Columbia and Yale, some of these, Ivy League schools. I know University of Florida considers itself the Ivy League of the state of Florida, is that you start to have that tension of, okay, we want to have students from all walks of life and everywhere else, but certain students excel more than others, and you may have an influx of students that disrupts what you're trying to create on campus.
Right.
This one seems, what Florida's trying to do here seems a little bit, I want to say ham-handed in the way that we're putting these artificial caps in place and not allowing merit to take hold.
I think good intention, poor execution. Because, again, we want to make space for people who live here. I get the idea. But we can't just say no to people from other countries. I mean, that is part of the whole reason that education is so important. It's experiencing life. It's going through things with people from other walks of life, and there's value in just that.
Mm-hmm. And if you look out at, where we're getting so many of our college students in the STEM fields, they're coming from India, Pakistan, they're coming from Asia, they're coming from all these places that, but they're coming here and they're helping us. Go out to Embry-Riddle sometime and see some of the stuff they're working on there to work on, taking down rogue drones, to getting us to the moon, all of these things.
It's next level
stuff. That's coming.
Yeah.
And a lot of those students, when you go out there and interview them, they're not from the United States, but they're here helping our university system. I know Embry-Riddle's private, not a public university, et cetera, et cetera.
But you made the point.
Yes, caveat there. Okay.
Alligator Alcatraz.
Yeah, the check's in the mail.
But it's not coming to us.
So we were always told that Alligator Alcatraz was going to be, the feds were going to take care of this bill for us because it's expensive.
Oh, yeah. What, $600 billion?
It was like, what was it, like $1 million a day or something they were spending down there.
To expand it and do all this fancy stuff.
All the fun stuff down there. And $608 million is what we tried to get from the feds.
Yes, excuse me.
And doesn't look like they're going to be cutting us a check.
This is a big blow because the president said you were getting this money. The governor said this money was coming. This is already a controversial topic, and it's had a lot of roadblocks. Apparently, they couldn't justify some of the money, so the books were a little weird. There have been a lot of complaints here. We're talking maggot-infested food. There were complaints about, just overall sanitation.
$92 million
all types of
for
stuff.
porta potties.
Yeah.
$92 million for porta potties. Yeah. It was a lot of money. 70% of the total spent on immigration in the last 3 years was just on this one project. And again, we were told the feds would pay for it. And that's a key point because immigration enforcement is one of those things that falls on the federal government.
Right.
It is not up to the states. The states can help. We did in this situation. But I think as a taxpayer, you have to look at this and say, is that where I want my tax money going? And granted, federal money, state money, it's all tax money. But the federal government was supposed to pick up the tab for this.
Yeah.
They're not doing it.
Well, I think it's just sort of egg on the face of taxpayers because even if you weren't for this, you sort of were thinking, okay, we'll get the money back and it'll go somewhere else, or it'll smooth this all over, and then we can forget about the fact that this is already sort of a really controversial, state-run housing facility for immigrants. Now, like you said, we're not seeing this money, and it's done. It didn't look like this is going to change.
No. And you mentioned the budget earlier, and this is where, again, the federal government has the ability to borrow money. It has the ability to run up a deficit. So it essentially can get cash from a lot of places. The state of Florida, under our state constitution, is obligated to have a balanced budget. We have a finite amount of money. Most of it's based on projections off of sales tax and other taxes we collect. When we spend, in this case, $600 million, where did that money come from and where could it have gone? Most of it was set aside for disaster response. We didn't have a hurricane this year.
Right.
Knock on wood, we won't have one next year. But
and then cue the removal of property taxes. So if we're not getting this money back and we're going to take away property taxes, where is the money? I wish I could shake the tree it's supposed to come out of.
How dare you inject logic into this conversation?
So, all right, we got 5 minutes left. We have now gone over the looming war. Bills are dying. We do have some local elections.
We do.
That are important. We want to remind people, do your civic duty. If you don't like the way things are in your municipality, you have the opportunity to change it.
Yes. City of Oakland has an election. Maitland has an election. Apopka has an election.
Eatonville
has an election also. Yeah. I know you interviewed the mayoral candidates for Eatonville. Take me through what is the kind of driving issue right there now?
Honestly, Eatonville's this historic town here, one of the first Black self-governing towns in all of the country. So people there really want to protect the history, but it's blanketed by poverty. They have struggled for so long. And so the three candidates that we talked to are really trying to drive it forward. They've got their own way of doing that. Two of them, Theo Washington and Wanda Randolph, already council members. So they're bringing sort of this experience with them. And then you have a concerned resident who we always say, if you don't like something, step up to the plate, Ruthie Critton. And that's what she's doing. So they're all talking to me about things that they would do to drive, economic power, to boost home ownership, to just make it look better, aesthetically, bring it up to code. It's a struggling town, but it is so rich with history, and they want to make it better. So that's the big thing. That election is Saturday. Like we said, early voting is happening right now, but the official election is March 7th, this Saturday. And then Apopka's up. So that's March 10th. I think that's Monday as well.
And Apopka, before we get off Eatonville,
Yeah.
all of your interviews.
Yes. Everything is on.
Shameless plug.
clickorlando.com/election 2026. That is where you'll find everything. So you'll hear us say it in the newscast. You'll hear Chris and I mention it because we want to make sure we have a central place for you to find this information. It is a lot going on.
See, you got to do
There
your
we
own
go.
teases right there.
Had to
Okay,
slide it in.
Apopka has a mayoral election. Matt Austin with some of our news partners did a interview with all three of the mayoral candidates there. Once again, those interviews can be found on clickorlando.com.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
you can go check all of that out if you want to see some of his. And Apopka you want to talk about, I'm going to be very nice to our second largest city in Orange County. But boy, oh boy, has that mayoral race in Apopka gotten nasty, vicious. There are allegations that, you don't live here. There's allegations that people are stalking other people.
The claws are out.
Oh, my goodness.
Incumbent Brian Nelson has been very vocal about the woman who's running against him,
Christine
Moore.
Yep.
He's the one accusing her basically of saying, you don't even live here.
Yeah, you got that. Then you have her saying, well, you amended the city charter to take in, or the property lines to take in your home. The whole thing has gotten, but I will say this, Matt's interview with these candidates, it stays above the fray. It gets into the issues facing Apopka. And Apopka, I think, because as I mentioned, second largest city in Orange County. It is going through that transition cities go through when they go from largely agrarian kind of, you can take care of, the city council can meet once a month and take care of all the business needs to be done, to you're now a metropolis. You are now a legitimate big city.
Right.
And you now have big city problems.
Exactly. Businesses are leaving and people want to protect what they love. And now they need somebody who's going to lead and say, I have a plan to make sure that we can keep businesses here, attract new businesses, and keep the energy and the influx of tourism and excitement that's been there.
And transportation and wastewater and all of the various issues that you suddenly have to deal with as your city grows and gets bigger. And that is where Apopka is now, I think, really struggling with those growing pains. And this is not unique just to Apopka.
Right.
As cities move from being kind of a small town to a big city, you start to have these legitimate growing pains. That's what Apopka is going through now, and we'll pick a mayor. Yeah. So that's fun.
And we will keep you up to date on all the elections that are happening in throughout Central Florida. That is our job. So I think our time is up.
We're getting there. I do like when we did the talking about gas prices. The Philly girl with the Wawa plug.
Sorry, I had to. It scared me. I mean, I already go to Wawa, and the bagels there are $3. It's too much for me. I need my gas to stay cheap.
Anytime I can't find you in the newsroom, I call you.
And I'm at Wawa.
You're at Wawa.
Yep. And I always ask you every day, do you want something? The answer is no.
No, but when Hoagie Fest hits, I will take you up on that. Okay. Speaking of Hoagie Fest, thank you for watching, Lauren. Thank you as always.
Great. It's a pleasure. We got a lot to talk about next week, too. So we hope to see you same time, 8:30 Wednesday, for Politically Motivated.